Ladies, gentlemen, and those within and without, welcome to Tavern Chat with your host, Dave the Bard. Grab a drink, have a seat, and let's have a chat. I've been wanting to get this going for a while now. I've been trying to figure out the best way to start a podcast again. This is actually my second official podcast. The last one ended up running for about a year until myself and the other host had to split ways for a little while because we're busy with life. Life is life, and you deal with what you got. We play our cards. But I still wanted to do a podcast. I wanted to talk with people, and I wanted to explore content. It's such a wide variety of thing. There's so much to learn, and I really enjoy learning about it. At least the creation of it, the story behind it, the editing behind it, everything that goes into the creation of it, it's super fascinating, and I wanted to talk about it, and I wanted to find people that were also very excited about talking about it. And that's kind of the goal of this podcast, is I want to find people that are super knowledgeable and also have no knowledge. I want to find the people that are just getting started, are just trying to figure out how in order to make their very first video, whether that's just barely learning the software, trying to figure out how to tell a story, or figuring out how to put clips together, or if you've been actually in the game for a long time, if you've been creating content, if you have hundreds, if not thousands of followers, and you're making content, you're doing great, but you're missing that one or two little things that could bring it to the next level. And I would love to have a conversation with you. I would love to learn more. I'd love to hear what you have to say, and I'd love for you to hear what I have to say about all the things that I've learned along the way. One of the big things, one of the most important things about creating content is having, at least to me, a story. Having a theme, having a focus for what you're making. And for me, my background in storytelling is actually from Dungeons and Dragons. I was in charge of a club back in high school. I loved playing it after high school and college. I found a couple of guys that were playing it, and that was fun. I was able to play it with people across the country. Whether I was a player and I had to act as a character or tell this backstory of where I came from and where I'm going. Cotton Eye Joe. Or if I was building out a world, building a setting, and creating this space for people with characters that either they knew so much about that they were like their second cousin, or it was literally just, I am a guy with a sword on a journey. And it was fascinating every time for me to not just give them the space in order for them to explore that character, but to help them build out these different ideas that they had never actually thought about and were just beginning to open their eyes to this world of Dungeons and Dragons. And it's a good time. If you have ever played Dungeons and Dragons, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, highly recommend it. But for those of you that has a little bit of experience with that fantasy storytelling, there's one thing that you gotta realize. It's that no matter how good your character is, no matter how unique the world is, no matter how many mountains and stores and people and bad guys, if you don't have a story, if you don't have a quest, if there isn't anything to really grab your player, grab the attention of all these people that are coming over to your house to eat snacks, then you're gonna kind of lose them pretty quickly. I've had it happen a couple of times where I've just tried to make a world and throw down a bad guy and hope that they went for the bad guy. There was a start point, there was an end point. And, well, they didn't really care. There wasn't really a point to the bad guy and good guy or start point. Eventually, they just made their own story. And when you have a story, or lack thereof, and your players have a story that they want, it comes to a crashing halt, usually in the terms of like airplane, ground, fire, explosions. You get the idea. When it comes to creating content, you want to make sure that you have a story. You want to have a focus. And one of the best examples of this, one of my favorite examples of this, is a buddy of mine named Sir Maxwell Shivington and his podcast, the Morphing Towers podcast. It's such a it's such a fun podcast because every time the episode begins, you're in a new location inside this morphing corporate building of just people that are trying to go about their day, but the tower in which all the rooms are it keeps changing. It's always super unique in where you end up being and who the host, Max, keeps talking to. It's such a unique way to tell a podcast, and you're having your conversations, and sure, there might be something going on, but it there has this theme through all the episodes of just constant change of just a little bit weird. And it's wonderful. And I got a chance to actually be on one of the episodes of the podcast where myself and Ellis, my other podcast host that was with me on my last podcast, we were inside of an auditorium, which we treated as a movie theater. And we were looking for popcorn. And when we were in there, we were kind of just talking about what kind of characters would be good at different ridiculous scenarios. One of the scenarios had us trying to figure out who would be better at hiding a body, Chewbacca or Winnie the Pooh. I had Winnie the Pooh. I definitely should have won that debate. I didn't. For some reason. I highly recommend listening to the episode. But it was such a fascinating time, and I still go back to listen to that episode and the rest of the episodes of the podcast because they're just so ridiculous, and I love it. It's a unique story thread as Max explores this tower trying to find the lost employees and try to get back to his day of being a corporate businessman. It's so cool. And it kept my attention. That one episode that I was able to be a part of blew my mind as to the realms of what you're able to do with a podcast, with content. And I think that is something that can be applied to more than just a podcast. Can be applied to all types of content. Now, the majority of people out there, they're gaming creators. It's very easy when you're starting out to open up your capture software, open up a game, maybe have a camera, maybe have a mic. Hopefully you have both of those. And to just record yourself playing. And I think a lot of people tend to do this when they're starting out because that's just the lowest barrier to entry is just to be able to have those things and just to start recording, just to start streaming is that way. But for a lot of people that do that, they don't end up being able to grow. Not their content is the same as the other 3,000 people streaming the same thing. Sorry, COD. Just because you decided to open up Warzone does not mean you're going to suddenly get hundreds of viewers. There has to be something about it. And I have a couple of ideas. At least when it comes to FPS and other genres. With FPS, it's very... everyone's doing like the same thing. Everyone's playing that same game. Everyone's grinding for... well, winning. That's a story that everyone's telling. You could try to tell the story of growing in rank. I believe that with COD there are ranks I think I don't really play it all that much, to be fair. I think the last Call of Duty that I played was like Black Ops 4. I may have played the most recent Warzone. Not sure. But you could tell us the most basic story that you can tell, which a lot of people are also telling, so you have to try to spice it up in other ways as well, is getting better, growing in rank, maybe trying out a new gun, trying out a single gun, maybe focusing a single thing over and over again, trying to see if you can get better. And being able to tell that story, it would take a lot more time, but I could totally see watching the progression of someone who had just barely started playing a game to when they'd put 100 hours, 500 hours, 1,000 hours into the game and figuring out, they learned all this stuff. They were able to play like this before, now they're playing like this. And it makes it super cool, and it makes it, I would say, unique. And, hey, I drop a follow. I don't really care for COD, obviously. But I'd be interested in watching that progression. That'd be sick. You just don't want to be the same. You don't want to be the same 4,000th streamer on Twitch.com to play the same game as everybody else. It's like a comedian. You wouldn't go to a comedy show and watch everyone come up, do their bit, walk off, and it's the same bit 30 times. You wouldn't want to be there anymore. Or at least, you wouldn't really care for number 27. 16 might have had a spin on it, but past that, you're kind of screwed. You have to make it unique. You have to tell your own unique story. You can do this kind of thing with sports. You could have wrestling tournaments. You could have football where you're able to set different teams against each other and you're able to make Super Bowl predictions. There are a lot of games that have the story already built into them. The thing about those is that replayability, it's a little funky. It's a little bit harder to grab the attention because they have a unique story. They're interesting. But what differentiates you versus the other 8,000 people that are making that content, that are playing that game? Is it the quality of your record? Is it your personality as you're narrating the story? My thought, as coming from the fantasy genre of having to put yourself in the place of the character and explore this world, put yourself in the place of the main character of your story-rich adventure game. Figure out where they're coming from. Try to relate as much as possible. The more you're able to immerse yourself, the more you're able to feel the emotions that the writers of the game are trying to make you feel. And if they're good writers, not only will you have a great time, but the content you're making will be awesome, and the people watching will have a great time. Now, it doesn't just have to be telling a story. You could add additional story, add a theme outside of the story that might be already there, i.e. challenge runs. I personally have tried to do different speed runs of games because there isn't really much interest in a game from 2006 that was only on a demo and kind of got released and was like $5 on Steam last time I checked. But if I can start speedrunning the game, Cloning Clyde is the game I'm talking about, I was able to get a video out that was a world record because not a whole lot of attention was put to the game. Just this random game from back in the mid-2000s, I managed to get world record, and that is now my top performing video on YouTube with over 2,000 views. I'm still learning, I'm still getting better, but 2,000 views for a random video that I didn't expect to do well at all. I was literally posting it there just to be an archive so I can submit my run and get my world record title. And it's doing great. It's not world record anymore, but that's not the point. The point is adding challenge, adding something unique, giving the people that are watching ideas on how to make their game more fun. Trying to beat all of Halo with just a pistol. Halo lasso runs are scary. I will probably never attempt to do one of those unless I get the homies. That way I can laugh at their misery as well as my own. But there are so many ways to add something unique to a game that everyone is doing. And you don't have to do a lot. You don't have to go out and find mods and plugins and things that'll completely change a game, though that would be really fun. You just need to do, as a content creator that I was watching for a while said, you just need to do 5% more than the next guy. 5% better, and you'll start outpacing them. You'll start growing more. As long as you are being creative and exploring new ideas and expanding the world of your content, you will begin to grow more. There are so many ways to spice up the game, the story of your content. And I doubt I have found all of them. I 100% doubt. There are so many out there. And if you have ideas for how to spice up the story, let's talk. Let's have a conversation. That is the goal of this podcast, is to build that conversation. I'm at Dave the Bard _ on Twitter. And if this podcast ends up making it to my YouTube, you can leave a comment there. And I want to chat. I want to talk with you. Maybe even have you on the podcast. I'd love to just be passionate about this thing called content creation. I'm super excited to get back into working on content again. Creating a platform that will allow for more conversation to occur about something that realistically no one outside of our world gives a damn about. No one cares, but we care. This is something that drives us to get up in the morning, gives us a way to express our passion. I want to encourage you to be able to talk more about it. And hopefully, if we can grow this podcast, if we can grow this platform, we can find so many people that have ideas that they want to share, have ideas that they want feedback on. So, hopefully, you'll join me in being so excited about content and how to tell a story. Shout out to my buddies Game Wiz and Pags, who I seriously appreciate them. We're all working on trying to join an esports org called Pride. Hopefully I can get them on to talk about their current projects and how they plan on telling their own stories. But until then, thank you so much for listening. Make sure to tip your waiters and waitresses, and I'll talk to you next time on Tavern Chat.